Welcome to the Collective Genius Podcast, the show for real estate investors who are looking to scale.
Finally, the CG podcast, the Collective Genius Podcast is here. If you don't know me by now, or you will get to know me, my name is Leon G. Barnes, only because of my first guest on episode 1 of the Collective Genius Podcast. Never had I been known as Leon G. Barnes prior to that. Thankfully, my first guest helped coin me with that name. Again, Leon G. Barnes, VP of Membership for the Collective Genius, and I couldn't be more excited to kick off our very first episode with my friend and a great first guest for anybody who asks all the great questions. Thankfully, we get to do that today, put him on the hot seat. Mr. Steve Trang, welcome to CG, the podcast, episode number 1.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a long time coming. You know, I've talked about it. I'm glad it's finally here. This is going to be awesome.
You know, I've done this with you in your studio, and I'm very envious that you get people to fly to you. We're going to do our best to get people to open up via this format, but I do enjoy the in-person format and feel like you got a little bit more out of me than I probably wanted to share.
Well, I mean, it was strictly professional. It wasn't like between the two belts. So,
yeah, well said. So, moving forward, this podcast, is all about real estate investing. I'm calling this and coining this as Conversations with the Genius. We have over 400 plus members throughout our multiple communities in the Collective Genius. These are all full-time real estate investors doing this business at the highest level. And my goal is for you that are listening to this show, more than likely you're either currently in real estate investing or you want to become a full-time real estate investor. So we're going to give you these conversations of a journey of an entrepreneur, not just a real estate investor, but the journey of an entrepreneur. And my first guest, as I mentioned earlier, Steve, when I first really started getting into real estate investing, I was told that there was this podcast with this guy that's a sales trainer and you got to talk to him. And I'm so glad that introduction was made many, many years ago. And as I got to know him more, I found out that, Steve had this background in engineering and liked basketball. And this is going to be my favorite part of doing this on a weekly basis moving forward, is getting to know my friends even better. So Steve, again, thank you for being my first guest here. Let's get this started, my friend.
Let's do it.
Your background, is I see it more and more now. I think you and I have had this conversation. I see more engineers jumping into real estate investing full time.
Yeah.
So take me back. How did this start? Why real estate? How did you get started?
Man, I want to give like this great glamorous reason why real estate, but the reality is, I got into real estate to buy properties, right? Like that's what Rich Dad Poor Dad said to do. For those of us that are like 30 plus, you guys, that's how you got started. Unlike everyone else who got started from Instagram. So I read the book, bought properties, but I met this real estate agent who was on the other side of the table. We're buying properties, and I'm thinking like, I have a master's degree in electrical engineering, and I'm making $70,000 a year at Intel. And like this guy just kind of like hangs out, walks around in flip-flops, smoking cigarettes, and he's doing really well for himself. I'm like, what do you do all day exactly? Right? As a realtor, he's like, oh, I just hang out and talk to people. It's like, that's it? I can do that. Right? And so I got distracted away from the Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I became a realtor in 2007 because I saw like this is a way to make really good active income so that I can buy more properties. problem, as we might talk about later on, is I got shiny object syndrome. So like got into real estate for the freedom number from Rich Dad Poor Dad. And it got totally sidetracked once I got my real estate license. But I got into real estate because that was the lowest barrier to entry. Like, if you were to go get if you wanted to cut hair, you actually have to get a cosmetology license, which requires like hundreds or thousands of hours. Every other like professional, you actually have to like do like an apprenticeship of some sort, except for real estate. Real estate, you can just jump right in.
So when did you go full time? I mean, obviously you were an engineer. That's what you went to school for, right? That's what you wanted to do, right?
Right. Well, yeah. Well, it's what I thought I wanted to do, right? Like when I was in grad school, I was reading like these papers from like all these great universities, Berkeley, UCLA, whatever, about like leading edge technology, right? Like in 2002, I was learning about like panels that you could fold, which are like commonplace today, but back then it wasn't. I was reading about USB 3 technology. I was reading like you could eventually have GPS in your car, right? This is back in 2002. Cool stuff. And I work at Intel, and you're just a cog in a gigantic machine. So like all the innovation that I was learning about, I didn't get to do any of those things. I didn't get to design cool stuff. I was just the bottom grunt in a gigantic organization where like in order to do cool stuff, the innovative stuff at Intel, you needed a PhD and like 20 years of experience, which I had. I wasn't doing either of those two things.
That was my follow-up. Why not continue down that path, maybe with a different company, so you can do that fun stuff?
Yeah, that was a path that wasn't open at Intel, and then if I were to do it at a different company, I started working around 03, 04, and the engineering world was just shot between the dot-com bust and 9/11. Like when I finished graduate school, the only company in the country hiring was Intel. Like that's how bad the economy was when I got into engineering. So maybe if there was a different company, it was a different season, maybe I would have been able to do cool stuff. Who knows?
So go back. Did you always want to be an electrical engineer?
No, there was no. I was as passionate.
I know you pretty well. I know that the NBA is your first dream. Now, outside of playing
NBA,
basketball,
then rap music, right? So, no,
now,
I wasn't
I
passionate.
No, hold on. I did not know you were a rapper. Tell me
No,
more about
wannabe rapper. No musical talent whatsoever. Yeah, like I didn't care about engineering. I did have once I went to grad school, there was a little bit of excitement because I got to work on cool stuff or learn cool stuff. But when I was at ASU, I only did electrical engineering for one reason only. I was good at math, right? Like I could excel in this industry because I'm good at math. It was a high-paying, stable job that I could attain. It was just to check a box. There was nothing like I'm one day going to be this amazing engineer. It was strictly transactional.
Transactional. You were good at math, so it came easy to you. You saw a guy in flip-flops and smoking cigarettes making probably more money than you, and you said, "This is the light bulb moment that I'm in the wrong profession."
Yeah,
so,
I was like, well, if I could get
people that are listening to this are going to say, that was your moment, and you took that leap of faith. How do you go from this is what I went to school for to I see this guy with cigarettes, now I'm going to jump full in, or did you transition still working that W-2 while you were
no, there was no transition. I met him, was like, what do you do exactly? Went to dinner. He's like, you go, like, what do I have to do to learn everything that you know? He's like, go get your real estate license. I'll teach you everything. I was like, great. Got my real estate license in 2.5 weeks. Submit my 2 weeks notice. 2007. Bam. Full-time realtor. And like my parents, I was in a very, very serious relationship who eventually became my wife. But at the time, no, there were no obligations. The only obligation I had was my mortgage.
That was the opportunity. You could just make a move without kids or anything along those lines.
Yeah, like if I crashed and burnt, like what they told me when I left was, if you ever want to come back, your job is available, right? So like, there was no risk for me to make this move because I could always go back to Intel.
Sure.
Now, that wasn't true in 2009 when I was like failing. And I was like, hey, are you guys still hiring? They're like, no, we're not. Like, no one's hiring. But that was, I had a safety net at the time, right? Like, I had, money in the bank account, money in a line of credit. So it wasn't as risky when you got no obligations, right? No wife, no kids.
Sure.
There wasn't very much risk involved.
Now, to clarify, you made the transition as a retail agent first, right? You were buying properties or wanting to buy more properties, but you saw this as an opportunity to make money to buy properties.
To make chunks of income to buy properties, yeah. Which is not true, by the way. Realtor is not the way to make chunks of cash.
Well, that's why.
The great thing about real estate investing, or not real estate investing, wholesaling and flipping, is you can make large chunks of cash, right? And people like you. Like, the homeowner is so grateful that you're able to help them out of a spot. And like, making 15, 20, 30, 50, 100K on a property is not out of the question. As a realtor, you're kind of capped at 3%, right? For the most part. And you have to do a lot of legwork. And I didn't realize it at the time. I just, 10x rule, everything's harder than you expect it to be, or it's 10 times harder than you expect it to be. I'm thinking in my mind, well, I have friends and family who all make a lot of money. So it shouldn't be hard to find people that want to buy and sell houses and make 3% over and over again, right? In my mind, it was really simple.
Right.
What I didn't take into account, I didn't know PI. I really didn't even understand DISC, right, at this time. I didn't realize how antisocial I was.
Why would you?
There's no need to know it. It's a good point. There's no need to know it.
You come from a corporate structure. Why would you all of a sudden know all these things that most business owners that are high-level business owners already know? Why would you know that?
Right. There's no reason to know it. So I didn't know myself. I didn't realize how much I would hate to call Leon once a quarter to ask how he's doing. How are your kids? Hey, your kid tried out for the junior high football team. Did he make the team? Right? Hey, what do you have planned for Christmas? How was your trip on spring break? I didn't realize how much I would hate those things. And also, those are the things required to be a successful realtor.
Right. So when did you realize that? How long into that journey? I mean, you built a very large retail team. How long into
I did.
that journey did you realize this?
I want to say I didn't realize how much I know I avoided it. I didn't realize how much I hated it until a few years in. I just knew it was one of those things, like looking at your books, right? Like, I'll look at it later. I'll look at it later. I'll look at it later, right? Like, I'll make that call later. I'll make that call later. So I kept putting it off. I didn't realize why I kept putting it off. I just know that I kept putting it off. And so I built a large retail team so that I didn't have to do that. And that's the reason why I had that team, right? Like, all right, you guys are going to work the CRM. You guys are going to call all the PPC leads. You're going to do, like, we had an inside salesperson, we had an outside salesperson, but my business was still strictly transactional, right? It was all Google pay-per-click because that's what I was good at. It was all these PPC leads that was feeding the business. And then, convincing other people to pay for my marketing. That's how we ran the business. Like, hey, go talk to these loan officers, go talk to title companies. What's that?
Yeah, you started running as a CEO. Right? You would
say,
I'm not great at doing these things, so let me hire a bunch of people to do those things I don't like.
Right. Yeah. And so I built out my business to fit my strengths, and that didn't really happen until I hired a coach in 2011. So the first 4 years were pretty atrocious because even though I had a mentor, I was kind of figuring it out by myself. So once I hired a coach, I understood I'm not a real estate agent. I'm in the real estate business. And once I understood I'm in the real estate business, now I hire an assistant. Now I hire a transaction coordinator. Now I hire outside agents. Now I understand marketing and I'm getting other people pay for your marketing.
Where'd you get to that point where you said, in order to take this to the next level, I have to hire a coach? How'd you get there?
It's simple. Fear. It's really simple, right? So like up until that point, I was like, coaches are scams, right? Like if you're so good at it, why would you teach it to someone else? Why won't you just do it yourself, right? Like that's the scarcity mindset that we have. And so I got short sale business, right, which is legal. Some people are saying on Facebook those aren't legal. It's legal as long as you're not forging people's signatures, right? I got I got REO accounts, so I was selling properties for Fannie Mae, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, right? And that was pretty simple. You just go to hang out where all the bankers hang out and get them drunk, and then you get business. And so once the REO business started going away, I saw like I need to figure this out or I'm hosed. And there's a guy in town, Russell Shaw, who is like just the biggest, baddest, right? He's the guy in Phoenix. Like, we know Doug Hopkins for the house buying side. Russell Shaw is the realtor side. And so I took him out to lunch. Like, look, Russell, I'm lost because what has worked for me is going to stop working because the banks are no longer foreclosing on people. Mm-hmm. So what do I do? And I'm looking at Brian Buffini, who is a fantastic realtor coach, Mike Ferry, another big realtor coach, or Craig Proctor. And he's like, between those three, I got two friends in Craig Proctor. They're both doing really well. I would suggest Craig Proctor. So I did. Went there, got coaching, and that's when the eyes or your perspective changes, right? I'm not a real estate agent. I'm in the real estate agent business.
So you had this aha moment that this is going away, so I have to figure this out. You'd hire a coach. I can't tell you how many people have said, hey, I don't need a community or a coach, or haven't needed them up until this point because I've done so well. Mm-hmm. And I argue, how much better would you have done had you had some stabilization or some foundation, I guess is the better word, to build off of. What advice would you give to that person right now that says, hey, I'm steadily growing. I've never hired a coach before. I've never been a part of any type of community. What would you say to that individual that's growing, but says, I don't need a coach?
Yeah, I think, could you do this on your own as a lone wolf? You absolutely could, right? There are a lot of people that have been successful as a lone wolf. The question then is what is your time worth? Because it's that compression of time that makes the biggest difference, right? And look, from the day I started working for myself, whenever I was in a car, I was listening to CDs, right? I was listening to audiobooks. From the moment I got into business, I read Think and Grow Rich. And then what was the other one? How to Win Friends and Influence People, like The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Like, you learn all this stuff. You can learn it on your own, but you cannot replace experience that you can borrow from other people. I'll give you a classic example here. So, guess what I found here? It's right here next to my seat. It's just, I don't know.
Oh,
it's just here for some reason.
Well, a little flex.
Right. It's here for some reason. So, I can share with you, while I was sitting there listening to Jason Lewis and Lucas share on Wednesday at CG, I'm reflecting, and like the success, the momentum I had at this last CG, you can directly correlate to Amanda Dean, who's coaching me. Directly, right? She's like, Steve, you need to call Leon and you need to tell him that you need your own call on the CG roster. Like, okay, I will call Leon, right? And then she says, and look, nobody knows that you offer lead manager and dispo manager training. You need to let everybody know. I was like, oh, okay, I need to let everyone know this is true. And then we had a service provider share, right, at the last CG. So I look around the room. All right, Joseph back with Rapid Fire, who's murdering it. His acquisition guys are on the calls. His dispo managers on the calls. His lead managers on the calls. I say, hey, Joseph, would you mind going up there and just tell everyone that your team is attending all 3 calls?
Yeah.
Right? And then the last thing was I had my presentation I won the belt for. And as I'm looking at it, the presentation, I have a different coach, a marketing coach, where I had 3 different hot seats with him in the last few months, that my hot seats in trying to articulate a message was in that presentation, right? So I would argue the last belt I won was because I have 2 great coaches. And I'm at a point in my career where it'd be dumb for me to say, But I could say I've got to figure it out. I'm good. I don't need any more coaching. I still have coaching.
Sure. So let's back up a little bit. You're building out a big brokerage team. When did you start really investing, taking just the brokerage hat off and putting on an investing hat as well? Did that happen simultaneously, or is this something that you added on later?
I add on later. So I wanted to add the investing side on, or the wholesaling side on, because I was doing it the whole time, right? Like I was wholesaling 2011, 2012. This whole time I was wholesaling, but it was a side hustle, right? Because one foolish reason, I just thought there's no way this could continue. I just really believe there's no way this can continue. It really has. So that's the first thing. And second thing, I didn't have the right integrator in place to support this, right? Like I'm going with my traditional realtor team. I've got my brokerage. I've got my title company. I've got a joint venture in mortgages. I just didn't have the bandwidth to do this. And I found another individual who became a partner to run it, right? And so I said, all right, you go manage it, you go run it, and I'll support with, systems, finances, relationships. I'll take care of all the visionary stuff. You go run it. And that's when that side eventually took off, because there actually was a person to pay attention to it every day.
Sure. So now you have brokerage, you've got some title stuff, you've got investment. Like, give me the great and give me the bad that came with all of that.
Well, so we did all that, and then we started a podcast, right? Real Estate Disruptors. Then we start
What year was it?
2018.
Okay.
So May 2018, we start Real Estate Disruptors. And then after that, May of 2019, we started doing sales training. And so once we started doing sales training, man, like I got fired from our realtor team. So that was fun, right? They're like, look, you're causing more problems than you're helping, so you're off. And so let's see, the question was, how did I manage?
Yes, I mean, give me the great. I mean, you got all these
the good,
going on.
the good and bad, right?
So answer at the end, obviously.
Yeah. So,
but yeah,
so it was. So it was a party basically all the way to 22, right? So like, once we started the sales training, it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. In 2020, April of 2020 or March of 2020, I got a very pleasant phone call from my friend Leon Barnes, right, who says, "Hey, we have a need for a sales trainer inside the Collective Genius," right? And that was a referral made by our great friend Gary Harper with Sharper Solutions, who runs Sharper Coaching, which is how I have Amanda as my coach. And from there, that was an incredible blessing, because it took us from here to here, right? Like that was tremendous. And so again, the party just kept going and going and going. And then the music kind of slowed down in March of 22. And then it just halted in June of 22 in Phoenix, right? So wholesaling got real hard, real fast. And of course, when things got hard, partnership ended as well. But as the party was going, I was like MC Hammer, as revenue was going up, expenses were going up, right? We doubled the size of our lease. We built out our media team from 2 employees to 7 at its peak. So we got all these obligations. And so funny thing about expenses, and everyone that's listening knows this, expenses don't care about your lack of revenue, right? And so we started hemorrhaging and losing. So we took a really, really healthy cash balance all the way down to 0 and past 0, because I didn't want to be the guy that lays everybody off, CG had this wonderful call when the music changed in the middle of 22 about how to adjust. And I'm stubborn. I didn't want to let people go. I was like, no, we're going to make it through this. And we made it through, but not with as many people as I thought were going to be with us, because slowly and steadily we had to let people go. So yeah. And I shared this the whole time, right, with PTD when we were doing PTD still, like, look, it's hurting, right? Like the values in the Phoenix real estate market didn't really change that much when the interest rates changed, but what the buyers were willing to pay changed by about 25%. They were willing to pay up to 90% of ARV They didn't care about repairs because the music wasn't going to stop. And then then they started underwriting correctly. And then, they start underwriting correctly, but the sellers are not adjusting with the market. It became really, really hard to do deals in 22.
For those that are listening and maybe don't remember that, or they were not flipping or wholesaling in March of 22, but that's when the interest rates shot up. And a lot of those people that were buying across the country, and we saw this as a collective, that a lot of those people that were buying, especially institutions, all of a sudden stopped. And so that wholesaler that really didn't need to negotiate much of all. I mean, you want $100,000 for that property in the Midwest? Sure, I'll give you that, because I know that I have a buyer at 150 already lined up, or 125, whatever the number was. Well, that stopped. So speak to that for me, because you mentioned that, we obviously as a community did a call. We always try to stay out in front, make sure our members they understand where the puck is going, not necessarily where it is. But we all knew at some point the music was going to stop.
Right.
What would you have done differently as an entrepreneur, knowing?
I would have let a lot more people go.
Sure.
Because here's the thing. I didn't want to. I felt like they've entrusted me to take care of them. They've entrusted me to take care of their families, right? And I don't know, maybe it's that Superman complex, superhero complex, you want to take care of everybody. But here's what I realized after going through all this. Every person that I let go eventually landed on their feet. Every single one, right? Because I was employing competent people. I wasn't employing people that were unemployable, right?
Sure.
Every single person I've let go has landed on their feet somewhere else, and they're doing just fine. Mm-hmm. So if I had to do it all over again, I would have let people go a lot sooner, because it was my ego that got in the way. It was my ego that felt this obligation to take care of people, and that if I don't take care of them, they won't be okay. That's a complete lie. They're all okay.
Right. As you've made this transition, because let's talk about this shiny object syndrome, because
you need someone else. I've overcome it. I've cured it. We're done.
Well, that's why you have to talk about it. Because there are plenty of people listening to this, including members within our organization, that struggle with being, their superpower being the one thing that they do the best before they move on to the next thing. So give me a little bit early on, why were you chasing shiny objects? And then second, how were you able to overcome that? I mean, other than therapy.
Well, I can't say I've really overcome it, because I've got massive FOMO all the time. So I think if you go all the way back, there's probably elements of achievement addiction, right? I think everyone that's successful, or almost everyone that's successful, has endured some sort of trauma as a kid, right? That's the reason why we're so resourceful. There's a reason why we're willing to do anything and everything, for some sort of approval that maybe we didn't get from mom and dad or elsewhere. So I've always been like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? I'm looking for this shortcut. Not necessarily a magic pill, right? It's not that. It's not, I'm going to buy this thing and it's going to work. I'm looking for this shortcut to success. What is a way, this new competitive advantage I can implement in my system or in my business to go to the next level? And so, being a real estate agent instead of being an engineer. I thought being a broker was the next level. Completely wrong. I'll talk anyone out of opening a brokerage for free, right? But then when you got a brokerage, you just got to add the title company and a mortgage company to it. And that makes it more profitable, which is true. It did, right? So I do think there's elements of wanting to get there fast, the lack of patience, the inability to be bored in what you do, because the most profitable businesses are boring and reliable. The ability to be bored, it just doesn't work really, really well. It doesn't really sit really well. You feel unproductive. Like, I have a problem. I can't go on vacations. I took my whole family to Hawaii, right? My parents, her parents, my wife, my kids. After 3 days, or I think 2.5 days, I was bored out of my mind. I'm not doing stuff. So I think the shiny object syndrome, I think it comes from achievement addiction, from your upbringing in one way or another. Not to say I had bad parents. I had wonderful parents, right? It's just that's what I got from my childhood. So I think it's achievement addiction, and then the inability to sit still. I think it's those two things, right? Like one of the things, I think Dan Sullivan says this, the problem with being a problem solver is that sometimes you're an arsonist. You'll go and start fires when you're a business so you have something to solve, right? So I think that is a problem I had, and I still have, right? I struggle from time to time. I have to remind myself to focus. And how to overcome it, I think there's a combination of a few different things. Having Jason Medley as a friend has been huge. I mean, he's been telling me, I don't know from day one, but pretty early on, like, focus, right? Yeah. So I think Jason Medley, Paul Sparks, who you connected me with the Whale Club, he introduced me to a whole nother world, another way of looking at systems and processes, and realizing, like, it's not just money. Money is not your only currency. There's also time, influence, attention, energy, relationships. And once I started looking at everything in those lenses, I was like, oh, because money for money, it makes sense to keep, adding things. But then you look at, like, well, you have limited attention, though. You have limited influence. You have limited relationships. Now you can be really intentional with how you apply those. And once you look at that through that lens, oh, yeah, you can't handle all those different things.
So I'm hearing this, right? And I'm thinking, all right, I'm an investor that does, let's say, a couple deals a month, and I'm really looking to grow and scale my business. Just been doing this for a couple of years, and I want to continue to add revenue to my bottom line. How do you get that person that right now is doing the same thing that you did, is saying, hey, I can see this is not that hard. I can do these bolt-ons because I'm already spending money for agents when they list my flips, or I'm already spending money on title. How do you get that person to laser focus and grow that business? Because they're seeing these as you saw these as opportunities. Looking back now at your age, the old age that you are, how do you get people to say, just focus on consistent, repeatable revenue that we hear quite often in this community? How do you get to that point, that predictable revenue?
I think an exercise that might have helped me was evaluating how much time and attention it was taking. Because that's what what I was underestimating was the time and attention. I was like, I can do more. I can just do it. I'll hustle. I'll make it happen, right? Which is mostly true. But what helped me was understanding my attention, specifically the cost of distraction. Someone comes to your office like, hey, seller won't do this. Seller won't show up the title. Now, whatever it was you were working on, right, you got to go pick up the phone. Or let's say every once in a while, hey, Steve, your title company isn't doing their job. Like, great. Now I got to go walk over, because it's in the next building over. Go walk over there. Guys, what are you doing right now? Like, we need to close this deal, Mortgages, same thing. A loan officer wasn't doing their job, but it was my JV. I have to call the loan officer, right? So it's Steve has to make the phone call. It's not a simple, my assistant will take care of it. When it's your business, you as the owner has to call the other owner so that they can go and rain fire on their side to make it happen, because my team to their team isn't working. And so it's those distractions that come up in the 11th hour that take you away from building your business. Alex Hormozi has this great presentation he did. He talks about focus. Like, he can't name any successful, super, super successful business owners that had more than one business. Right. And then, like, there's other things, right? You hear, like, the 7 streams of income. Like, you got to have 7 streams of income. But very people add the layer of, like, well, he was really successful at one, and then he added 6 more. Or, like, you hear people's like, all the wealth is created in real estate. So, yeah, all the wealth is created. Or everyone that's super wealthy has a lot of real estate. But are they wealthy because of real estate, or are they wealthy elsewhere and they bought real estate? those details sometimes get lost in those quotes, in those shareable quotes.
I think another piece of that answer you're leaving out, which this is a good segue to what you're really focused on right now. All of this background of the retail side, brokerage side, title, wholesaling, partnerships, sales training. I think it's also super important to understand we do this a lot. Like the word grind is used quite often, especially when you're growing something. And we all know what happens when you grind something. Eventually it breaks down. So at some point you have to get to a point where you are no longer grinding, you're growing teams. But I think you said something to me recently that really hammered this point home about really focusing on predictable, revenue, as we mentioned. But in addition to that, the things that you love, like that part of it, of really understanding what's highest and best use, what do you love, and what that brings you the most joy, and also hopefully that is the same with money. You've done this recently,
Right.
so
Yes.
the transition that you've made recently is what?
I mean, I just love focusing on sales training, and then I wanted to be a school teacher at some point.
Hold on,
Right.
buried the lead. You didn't say that before. I said, what did you want to do? And you said, I don't know. You want to be a school teacher?
At one point, I wanted to be a school teacher.
What kind of
Right.
school teacher?
So I remember in high school, my physics teacher was so inspirational. Like, he made physics fun in high school, right?
Said no
So
one other than you.
yeah, he made it interesting. And like, I was thinking, man, this would be really cool one day when I'm rich, because there's no way I'm going to accomplish my goals being a school teacher,
Yeah.
right? But man, being a sales trainer, I get to change lives every single day, because I get to work with people and watch these light bulbs go off as they're getting better at sales, right? Like Eric Martin pulling me aside one day at CG is like, hey, just want to let you know, because we've been working with you, I've been able to buy the car I want. Like, how freaking awesome is that, right? And so, yeah, being able to do what I want, get compensated well for it, what else could you possibly ask for?
Yeah. So this is a point I want to get across, because I see this weekly for sure, maybe even daily. Conversations that I have with vendors, or what we call in the Collective Genius service providers like yourself, that's a sales trainer within this group. What I've seen over the years and why I love real estate so much is it's not just a niche thing when it comes to single family. Are you doing single family? Are you doing multifamily? Are you doing self-storage? Are you doing commercial? Are you doing mixed use? Are you developing? There's all kinds of ways to make money. But what I've also notice over the years, I'm 6.5 years now with CG on this side, 10 plus years now in real estate. And I didn't realize beyond just those niches of how many different ways that people can find passion and make it a business, like you would service a service for others that want to grow and scale their business. And frankly, they enjoy it. They don't necessarily love talking to sellers. They don't necessarily love managing salespeople. There are so many different ways that people make money in this industry and change lives, like you just mentioned. Right. Like, buying a car I'm sure is a little piece of what I'm sure you're appreciative of that. But there's so many lives that are changed on people's teams and businesses that are transformed from being stuck. Because as you scale, there will be that time that you get stuck, and that's where you have to continue to have the right teachers, the right coaches, the right service providers in your life to help you continue to grow. And we've got, I think it's just over 40 service providers in our group, all at some point, for the most part, were a real estate investor that figured out, hey, I can't find this service, so I probably just need to do it myself. That's the beauty about this space, is find what you're passionate about. And generally, if it's in this real estate investing world, you can find a way to monetize it.
100%. There's so many different ways to make money inside of real estate. It's wild.
So at this point, you're just focus 100% on sales training for real estate investors?
So there is still something else I'm working on, which is the podcast. So the podcast,
That was a given, obviously.
yeah. But even that's been on the table, right? Because like we examined everything. Like, does this make sense to continue doing? Does this serve our purpose, and so on? And the answer is yes, right?
Absolutely.
But like we went through a period though where we're like, every single thing, is this in alignment with what we're trying to accomplish? So those are two things. I think you can make the argument that it's just part of the same thing, right? It's just a part of the sales training because it's part of the marketing and advertising. But it still requires effort and focus, and like want to deliver a good product. So I would say maybe it's 1B, but those are the two things I'm working on.
So we haven't talked much about the podcast.
Yeah.
When did you know you had something with the podcast?
Episode 1.
Really?
Yeah. So for sure verified in episode 2, but I told myself I'm going to do 10 episodes, and if it bombs, nobody noticed, so it's totally fine, right? Because if it bombed, then no one knew you had a podcast, right?
Right.
So I was like, I'll do 10 and see where it goes. And the first one, we had 30, 35 watching it live. And on the second one, we had like 70 people watching it live. It's like, okay, there's something here. If they're willing to watch for an hour and a half, 70-some people, we've got something. And it was actually really nice. We had a guy who was the producer for the show, because I just went straight to like people that know what they're doing. When I started the podcast, I didn't try to do it on my own. I just hired somebody else. And he's like, hey, Steve, I just want to let you know, like, people podcast, sometimes it takes a few months, like initially maybe like your mom and like your friends will listen. It just takes some time to build. It was really nice. Right. And afterwards, like, wow, okay, you know what you're doing. I see you've got some skills here.
So where did that come from? You said that you had 30, 40 people live. They don't just show up. Where did you promote it? What happened?
Just Facebook. So, before the podcast, I was a nobody on the national stage, but I was still somebody in the Phoenix market on the realtor side, right? On the realtor side, on the wholesaler side. So like I had a presence, like I was someone that was constantly being recruited for these brokerages, from these loan officers, from these title companies. And I was wholesaling, right? I knew Chris Iman, I knew Jamil, like I knew a bunch of the other wholesalers. So I had a reach initially. But I definitely borrowed a lot of authority from a lot of people to build the reach for the podcast.
Yeah. So you had a Phoenix group. You just Facebook. Why did that producer say you've got something? Like he knew what was after the first episode or first few episodes?
I think part of it was listening, but I think part of it also was just him watching. Like people were watching it live. They were commenting. They were asking questions, because we did something different. Like up until that point, I don't know anyone else that was requiring you to be live in studio and streaming live on Facebook. I don't know anyone that's doing either, or if they were, they weren't doing both. Because that was like my thing. Like if I'm gonna do this, I gotta be different than everybody else. Because we already have Joe McCall, Sean Terry, all these other influencers, right? Matt Terrio, the real estate radio guys. I had to do something different, and so it worked.
What's next? I mean, it's now how many years? Dating back
6+.
Yeah, 2018. Yep. So what's next with the podcast?
So we rebranded it from Real Estate Disruptors to Disruptors, because now that I'm focused on sales training, I want to hit other markets. And so we're trying to attract other industries, so that, I've had some people very nice, complimentary, say like, Steve, you're like the Joe Rogan for real estate. I was like, thank you. I want to be the Joe Rogan for business. And then eventually I want to be the Joe Rogan, period. So Joe Rogan for business.
You got some work to do on that one, but I
started
out with, I will say this as a compliment to you. I was really young when Larry King was in his heyday. And then as I got older, he was really old. But I remember saying to you the first time that I watched your podcast that, you were you're a great listener first and foremost. Most people that are hosting a podcast, they just want to talk, and you were really, really good at listening and extracting by your follow-up questions. And so I didn't call you Joe Rogan, I called you Larry King of
Yeah.
real
Well,
estate.
thank you. I'm honored.
Yeah.
I'm honored.
I think that's, that's why you fit really well on that, on the sales training side, is you understand the value of listening. People have heard me that have listened to me over the years have heard me say this, that at the basic level of high school or middle school, I don't ever remember a listening class involved in communications ever. Man, it's so important, especially when we're dealing with sellers that we're trying to build trust and also, quite frankly, understand what their pain points are. And if you're just talking the entire time, you're not going to get that. And I think that's the brilliance. You can have all the objection killers in the world, but if you don't listen, you may miss the opportunity that gives you the information that you need to ultimately win the deal.
Exactly. I actually had a conversation with RJ Bates about this.
Now, hold on. Was this a clean conversation that we can actually share? Because our feet and argument is a bit of a rebel.
It was a clean conversation. We were both talking about how we're both pretty good at sales, right?
Yeah.
And the argument that we were discussing.
Asking, he'll tell you.
Yeah. And we were speculating. Well, first of all, we had one theory, which is like the better you are at talking trash, the better you're at sales, because you're witty. You can come up with it on the spot, right? Okay. Which is kind of how the genesis of part in the disruption. But the other thing is that we both have a podcast where we're interviewing another person, and the whole time we're interviewing the other person, we are intentionally putting our brain in the listener's seat, right? Like, what are they thinking when they're listening to us talk? How are they receiving this? And I think that skill of intentionally removing your own ego from the conversation translates really well when you're running a sales appointment. I'm not Steve in the living room, right? I am somebody else who's listening to this conversation and then directing the conversation the way it should flow as a neutral third party.
I don't believe that you said neutral third party with RJ. He wouldn't pick those words up. You would have had to simplify a little bit more for RJ.
Smaller words.
This is a good segue. Part of this podcast, it's very important to me that those that are familiar with the Collective Genius understand our culture, but those that may not have heard of us or may have been under a rock in the real estate investing world, obviously now 14 years strong with this community. This entire community is built on those that are the elite give value back to others. Iron sharpens iron. And so it's important to me that every guest gives something of value. And usually we use the term around here, 0 to 1. We're go-givers, and we want to make sure that we give something to someone that they can use and apply tomorrow. Learning level 10 things when you're at level 0 are nice to set goals, but it doesn't get you started out of the blocks. All right. I want to run a 9.7 100 meter dash. All right, that sounds great, but how do I start? Show me how to get out of the blocks first, and then maybe I can finish first, right? So if there was one thing that over the years that you feel like you've shared and has given the most value from a very elementary 0 to 1 perspective, and then I'll ask you about that next level as well, but would love to hear one thing that of value that you've given to others, maybe in this group, or maybe just something that you just thought of as we're talking.
I think one of the presentations that went really well was knowing who you are, right? Like, the unique ability to the genius zone. Just, I've taken a whole bunch of personality profile assessments. I think Phil Green and I are both addicted to that stuff. But really knowing who you are, because once you really get to know who you are, everything else gets a lot easier. Because we talked about, like, there's all these different ways to make money in real estate. there's no right way to build a business, right? The perfect business for Steve is different than a perfect business for Leon. It's different than a perfect business for Phil Green, right? So like getting to know who you are, was the Sun Tzu quote is like, if you don't know yourself and you don't know your opponent, then you'll certainly perish. If you know your opponent and but you don't know yourself, you have a chance. If you know yourself and you know your opponent, you can fight 100 fights and never perish, right? And so getting to know yourself is so wildly, it can save you a lot of time. It can save a lot of mistakes. If I had known that I don't want to call people to talk about their kids, probably wouldn't became a real estate agent, right? Probably just stuck to the W-2, buy some properties, buy more properties and buy more properties. Who knows? That might have been the world I lived. But I didn't know myself, and I didn't realize I think we're all weird, but like how weird I am, like being an individualist, my chart scares certain people.
Sure.
So yeah, I wish I knew myself better.
You're definitely unique. That's the best way to not call you weird.
Yeah.
So the best advice, regardless of level, that you've ever received in this community?
Man, in this community, I was going through a really tough time. Yeah, I was going through a really tough time in my organization. A person within my organization that I cared for a lot was really upset with me. She lashed out. She was very upset. And in that time, I remember having lengthy conversations with Eric Brewer, Stephanie Betters, Gary Harper. And I remember Eric challenging me because he's such a jerk. He won't let you just sit still. He really challenged me.
The best way, right? The
The best way.
That challenges your current thought process.
Yeah.
Which can be, dude, I just need you to listen. Sometimes that's what we want, but most times what we need is the change of perspective.
So he just kept asking me, all right, Steve, well, how are you responsible for that? What did you do to lead to that? Okay. What did you do to lead to that? How are you responsible for that? What did you do to cause that outcome? Are you giving her the time that she requires? Are you giving her the attention she requires? Are you doing this and this? Like, dang it.
Mm-hmm.
He's right. And so he coached me through a really difficult time in my organization. So I would say that's the biggest thing, right? It was extreme ownership.
Yeah, that right there. If I could bottle up what you get from a community like the Collective Genius, is that this world of one that I think most of us are growing up in, younger generation. It's not all, and I hate to generalize, but there is this, we don't talk to each other anymore. People have headphones in all the time. And,
oh, yeah.
There's just this world of one. And so we all get lost in our own narrative. And without human interaction, I think we limit ourselves, especially as business owners, because there's no manual, as you mentioned before. There's a bunch of great books, and we'll ask you your recommendations here in a bit, but there's a bunch of great books out there that can help. But again, those books are for maybe foundation, very generic, not necessarily specific to you, maybe not specific to your industry. Being around others that do what you do, that are ahead of you on that ladder to success, they're up on another rung than you. They're pulling you up and helping you climb, especially with, you mentioned earlier, that the suppression of time.
Mm-hmm.
That just, even if that's a local group where you're doing 2 deals and somebody in that group is doing 4 a month, just being around others to call you on your own internal BS. I mean, that, especially surrounding yourself with people that will call you on it. Because I will say that guys like Jimmy Vreeland, Eric Brewer, anytime I think I got something figured out, it's questioned and it makes me better. I don't always want to hear it. I don't. But it makes me long-term better at life, not just business, at life, because you get out of that world of one. My wife and I talk about this all the time. You'll see people that just, you don't even know, you can just tell they're stuck in that world of one. And if they're stuck in their personal life, more than likely they're stuck in their professional as well.
Oh, for sure. 100%.
And if I could bottle, the ability to grow because somebody's calling you on your own internal, that's worth the price of admission for membership just in itself.
Absolutely.
All right, let's get to some rapid fire here at the end. These are some questions that I'm going to ask every guest moving forward. These are all Collective Genius members, people that are in one level or another, the 4 levels that we have. And I think these are questions that are very relatable to those that are listening that either are full-time in real estate investing or want to go full-time in the future. So give me your superpower. What's your superpower as a business owner, but also in life? And they may be one and the same.
So I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to give you 2. So first one,
you to cheat.
because they go hand in hand. The ability to learn complex concepts and then explain it so that a 3rd grader could understand it.
Okay.
So they go hand in hand because I love learning. And I love sharing what I'm learning in a way that other people can understand it.
Can I tell you that based upon this conversation, I can tell you that relates back to your physics teacher.
Yeah.
It might not be the original thought where that came from, but hearing you talk about your physics instructor, because we all had those classes as we were growing up in school, and we thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be the one that gets me. And then you have a great teacher that explains it at a very easy level, and you're like, man, that geometry, I thought that would be hard. That was super easy. That a great teacher. And there's other things where you have a bad teacher and you go, it didn't seem that complex, but I just could not totally get it. It took me a while to finally get it on my own because the teacher wasn't getting across. Dude,
the teacher.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say the teacher makes it harder for you to learn it. If they just get out of the way, you would have learned it easier.
Yeah, and that's usually, especially today, that is one competitive advantage that today's generation has over our generation. I couldn't just jump on YouTube. These books over there that were usually dated, that were encyclopedias. Yeah. And you may be learning about something in the encyclopedia that's already been, that's already old information. The internet and YouTube is just fantastic for that. So yeah, if you do have a bad teacher, get out of the way and just learn it on your own. So dude, that's a great superpower, especially for what you do and what your passion is for a living, is helping others. So I love that one. What was the second one that you're going to cheat with?
No, that was it. Learning, going out there and learning it, understanding it, and then explaining it. I'll say they go together.
So you've done a lot of podcasts. You've had a lot of conversations, including with me. We've had a lot. Give me one thing that no one knows about you.
So my favorite TV show, I think, of all time is South Park.
Wow.
Okay. I haven't watched it since I cut the cable 10 years ago, but Eric Cartman and I think we're spirit animals.
I've never heard you talk about South Park before.
Yeah, I saw it popped on my feed the other day. Do you ever watch South Park?
Yeah, actually, Jimmy Vreeland. I now that it's, I don't watch full episodes. It's like a lot of things, I'll see it in the feed. And so this is where you and Jimmy need to talk, because Jimmy Vreeland, St. Louis investor, we all know, he absolutely loves South Park. So you guys need to talk about your love for that show.
Once I get to the point where I can't be canceled, I will be Eric Cartman on the streets, on social media.
Yeah, I would advise, if you've never seen the episode where Eric Cartman was at the University of Colorado and he was looking for players. That is a really episode. That's one that I sent to Jimmy. That's right as Deion Sanders was taking over the University of Colorado. Pretty fun.
Yep.
All right. So you like South, I mean, you never told me that one. So that is something I didn't know. You gave me the things that CG, the conversations that you had, the one relationship, like where this is the person. Do you have one or multiple of the people that you call on when you need specific, like who's in your, what would be called the Rolodex? Who's in your Rolodex that you can trust that is always going to be there for you on any challenge that you have?
Well, I think for sure you.
I didn't ask this question to get that answer, by the way.
Yeah, I think for sure you. I mentioned Amanda Dean, right? Gary Harper, Phil Green. Let's see who else is on that list. That Jason from time to time, right? Jason Medley. See who else is on that list. I would say those are the biggest ones. Stephanie obviously has been instrumental. Jason Lewis. Oh, then obviously Felipe Posans and Jesus Toledo. Like,
yeah, I mean,
they
just
not the thing different.
I mean, that's a lot of. But yes, give me that piece of it. Why? Those are great humans, regardless of business, and they're business owners as well. But why those people?
So they're all, not all. The last four are service providers and run a business. So like they've experienced all the challenges I've experienced. Phil, because he is the best at understanding people like puzzle pieces and how they all fit together. I don't think there's anyone better at like, all right, yeah, just get this person, get this profile, get that person, get that profile, make sure they take this assessment, and see it. Like, okay, based off this result, like this is what they should do. Like, there's no one better at piecing a business together with people like puzzle pieces. And then Eric, we've always had a special relationship. It started with Brewer Method, but I think he's got no filter. Maybe this goes back to the Cartman thing, where he's got no filter, so we can just call each other on our BS. Because I'll do the same thing to him, right? I was like, hey, Eric, when you do this, I just want to let you know this is how it comes across. Right? I'm not saying this is what you do. I'm not saying this is what you intend. It's just how it comes across. And I'll leave it up to you how you want to handle it. Right?
These relationships, as you're talking about them, these are bigger than just business. I mean, these are like brothers and sisters that do what you do at a high level. It's like, to me, it's like the analogy I use is, if you were really trying to get good at basketball, like you had a team of NBA players that you could call at any given time that could help you with what their greatest piece is. You could have Steph Curry as the person that you could call for shooting. You could have Dennis Rodman for rebounding because you wanted to get better. You have these very specific players that you can call on that are not just resources for business, they're resources for life.
Right.
And to me, that's, when you talk about people that you have relationships with, and that's just a few, that's not including the people that you talk to throughout the year. I appreciate you sharing that. Do you read for fun?
I listen to audiobooks for fun.
Okay. So let's say listen or read books for fun. Give me one book that you would recommend for fun. And fun's maybe different for you than some others, but your fun.
Man, if I had to pick one, it's tough because there's so many great ones. I would say The Road Less Stupid, which I don't follow enough with that one, but The Road Less Stupid is probably,
that wasn't,
if I had read, what's that?
That wasn't for business?
Oh, it's definitely for business. Are we saying for fun? Or are you saying, for fun? Like
fun read.
Fiction?
Do any fun read. We can always talk about business books. I want to know.
Oh, no. Fiction? No.
Well, anything outside of business, non-fiction.
Audiobooks for fun is for fun. Learning is fun for me. Fiction, I cannot think of anything
No,
recently.
not fiction. Nonfiction books are not business related. It's not that hard.
Yeah, it's pretty hard. I got nothing for you.
Hard because you
That's
just
not
take
my
one.
thing.
It's
No,
not
because
hard.
for me, yeah, like, going back to the individualist thing, I don't mean to hijack this conversation.
You are.
But like individualists, low B, right? -1.5 sigma. I actually asked Austin McCurdy, is like, hey, according to the I should be exhausted every time I go to CG. Why am I not? And he said, your A is so high that you are looking to figure out how you're going to win. You are just getting information to figure out how you're going to win. This isn't about talking to people. It's about how you're going to win.
It's competition.
It's competition,
So,
right? Looking for the next advantage.
well, this is leading right into you're eating out of my hands right now, because
Yeah.
the thing I will say to you as your friend, and this is what we were talking about earlier, sometimes you're
Mhm.
world of one. I know how much you love sports,
Yeah.
and I know how much you love to win. And we both know, and a lot of people listening to this know, how applicable sports and business are.
Mhm.
Can't tell you haven't read Mamba Mentality or Five Ring Circus or Showtime or any books that are sports related, of building great teams and championships.
I watched documentaries. So like I watched the Steph Curry documentary on Apple TV. I watched
Okay.
the interview between Bill Belichick and Nick Saban. Incredible interview where they interview each other. So I watch the Redeem Team was cool to watch. So I'll watch those, but no, I don't read those.
Okay. All right. I promise you, you listen, download one of those on Audible. I'll give you a couple suggestions.
I mean, does Relentless count as nonfiction, not business, or that's still business?
Relentless. Give me that is about
Tim Grover, he talks
yeah,
about.
oh yeah. Yes. That's
Okay,
yeah, that's
for me, that's still business. That's still business for me.
because you see them one and the same, right? You see
Yeah.
business and performance of sports as the same. But yes, any Tim Grover book, that's not necessary.
Yeah, so I would say Tim Grover. I would put
There
there.
you go. Now you got one. All right.
Yeah.
And then business would be
The Road Less Stupid.
bro, that's stupid. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. This has been great. Got to know you a little bit better. How did the people get to know you a little bit better? Tell them where they can find you. Obviously, there's a lot of different ways. So where can the people find you?
So if they want to connect with me, Instagram at steve.trang, steve.trang. I put a lot of sales content out there. We also have our podcast on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify. It's Disruptors. And you can always send me a friend request. Steve Trang on Facebook. I think Leon is my number one person, where we have 1,002 mutual friends.
I didn't think that was possible.
I didn't know that was possible either. And like I pruned my friend list down to like 3,600. So like it makes it even more impressive, because like I went through and like I don't know who that is. I don't know who that is. I don't know who that is. So the fact that I cut off 1,400 from my list, and you and I still have 1,000 mutual friends.
This business
Pretty awesome.
is large but small at the same time, especially for those that are doing high level business in real estate. And so it's a pretty small, I mean, it's large, but at the same time, those that are doing volume, it's not a massive number. Tell people what it is that you do specifically on the sales training side, because I know this is an opportunity for those that don't know you offer what you do. I've seen it in action. I've seen on the training calls that you do within this community. In the first 3 calls that we've done, we've had over 150 acquisition specialists, live role playing. I mean, obviously that's a part of our community, but tell people who that you offer that sales training to for their teams.
Yeah. So we were talking about earlier about getting to know yourself. So like most business owners don't get into business to train their sales teams. Like, go do your great thing, right? Like the difference between like the top organizations and like the average ones is the caliber of their sales team. So like go do your great thing, and we come in and we train your sales team, and we turn them into assassins. So once you have great assassins closing a lot of deals, you have more money to go do what you love to do. That's what we help do.
So this is an opportunity for those that don't want to run, especially out of the gates, a corporate style structure where they have to have a sales manager always training. I have seen this in action. I have seen people scale because Steve is sharpening their salespeople on a weekly basis. And I can't say enough great things about what you offer as a product within this community, as well to real estate investors, but also the podcast. I feel like it's been, it's been my number one. There for a long time, I was running long distances, and I can tell you that there was just so many good nuggets, but just I got to know people at a deeper level. And so if you're not going to be that from here on out, listen to Steve and listen to us, and I think we've got you covered.
Absolutely. And I forgot to mention, Leon is number one on my champs list. So there's also that.
Number one on champs list. Well, so you can't leave us with that. What is champs?
Champs list is I look at the 50 most impactful people in my life. People that are my ambassadors, people that care about me, who have a tremendous network and are super knowledgeable. We go through and we rank them on those 4 different things. And Leon's number one by far. And he does a pretty good job of answering the phone. I know as busy as you are, generally, if you don't answer, you get back to me in like 20, 30 minutes. I don't want to ruin those expectations for everybody else, so I apologize.
Yeah. I did get one call while we're on here. I had to push him through the voicemail. You were more important right now. I will say this. That's a great way to end this. I didn't have you number one, episode number one for the CG podcast because I was number one on your champs list. But it does mean a lot to me. My passion is connecting people that can serve each other and not just one. And I feel like you're someone that has always lived the core values of this organization at the highest level. So it's been my honor to host you for the very first CG podcast. We've come a long way in a little 6+ years here, and it's been great to see your journey and learn a little bit more about it today. I appreciate you joining me, Steve. And for those that would like to learn, obviously, more information about The Collective Genius, you can find us at thecollectivegenius.com. For now, I'm out. We'll talk to you soon.
Are you ready to scale your real estate business? Visit thecollectivegenius.com, where real estate investors come to scale. Subscribe to the Collective Genius podcast and hit the bell icon to be notified when our next episode releases. And thanks for listening.